Hello, it's Willie from the Ozarks, and we're ready for our January the 26th lesson in A Course in Miracles workbook for students from the original edition, lesson 26. My attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability. My attack thoughts are attacking what? My invulnerability. Kind of in a continuation of lesson 23, 3 days ago, I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. You know, in this world we do seem vulnerable, but the truth is that's only because that's the way we've perceived it because of what we've been sending out. We're getting back in exact return. So let's quit sending out those attack thoughts. Let's quit seeing them at all. My attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability. It is surely obvious that if you can be attacked, you are not invulnerable. You see attack as a real threat. That is because you believe that you can really attack. And what would have effects through you must also have effects on you. It is this law that will ultimately save you. But you are misusing it now. You must therefore learn how it can be used for your own best interests rather than against them. Because your attack thoughts will be projected, you will fear attack. And if you fear attack, you must believe that you are not invulnerable. Attack thoughts therefore make you vulnerable in your own mind, which is where the attack thoughts are. Attack thoughts and invulnerability cannot be accepted together. They contradict each other. The idea for today introduces the thought that you always attack yourself. If attack thoughts must entail the belief that you are vulnerable, their effect is to weaken you in your own eyes. Thus, they have attacked your perception of yourself. And because you believe in them, you can no longer believe in yourself. A false image of yourself has come to take the place of what you are. I am as God created me. We're not vulnerable, but takes some new learning, doesn't it? Practice with today's idea will help you to understand that vulnerability or invulnerability is the result of your own thoughts. Nothing except your thoughts can attack you. Nothing except your thoughts can make you think you are vulnerable. And nothing except your thoughts can prove to you this is not so. So we're working with our thoughts. 6 practice periods are required in applying today's idea. A full 2 minutes should be attempted for each of them, although the time may be reduced to a minute if the discomfort is too great. Do not reduce it further. The practice period should begin with repeating the idea for today, then closing your eyes and reviewing the unresolved situations whose outcomes are causing you concern. The concern may take the form of depression, worry, anger, a sense of imposition, fear, foreboding, or preoccupation. Any problem as yet unsettled which tends to recur in your thoughts during the day is a suitable subject. You will not be able to use very many for any one practice period because a longer time than usual should be spent with each one. Today's idea should be applied as follows. First, name the situation. I am concerned about blank. Then go over every possible outcome which has occurred to you in that connection and which has caused you concern, referring to each one quite specifically, saying, I am afraid blank will happen. If you are doing the exercises properly, you should have some 5 or 6 distressing possibilities available for each situation you use, and possibly more. It is much more helpful to cover a few situations thoroughly than to touch on a larger number. As the list of anticipated outcomes for each situation continues, you will probably find some of them, especially those which occur to you toward the end, less acceptable to you. Try, however, to treat them all alike to whatever extent you can. After you have named each outcome of which you are afraid, tell yourself, that thought is an attack upon myself. Conclude each practice period by repeating today's idea once more. My attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability. So we got an idea of what to do there. You're going to sit and tell yourself, you're going to do this 6 times today, each for 2 minutes each. And then what you're going to do is you're going to tell yourself, I am concerned about blank. And then you're going to look at all the possible outcomes and you're going to tell yourself, I'm afraid about that what will happen, that blank will happen, and name it. And then after you've done that, say to yourself, that thought is an attack upon myself. And then after you've finished your full 2 minutes, then conclude by the general statement, my attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability. And be sure to use this during the day if you need a quick fix on some kind of something that you're foreboding or upset about. All right, but 6 practice periods a day, each 2 minutes. Now let's go take a look in our text reading, where hopefully you've finished reading chapter 8, and we're going to start with healing as corrected perception. If you want to read along with me, I'll give you just a minute while I'm telling you about another kale. This one here is it's kind of a green with a kind of a purplish center, and it's Japanese flowering kale. And it's an 85-day. Japanese flowering kale is perhaps the most colorful edible leafy green we have ever eaten, and one of the most delicious. This delectable kale has dramatic ruffles, sublime flavor, and dense nutrition. The bold fuchsia and cream-colored leaves add a depth of sweetness and refinement, making it especially gourmet. The culinary possibilities for such a vibrant and delectable vegetable are boundless. Called habotan in Japan, this edible ornamental treat is a focal point for cool weather landscaping and garden design. The plants are super frost hardy, and their color and sweetness actually intensify as the weather gets colder. It is not uncommon to see the cheerful magenta and white splashed heads of habotan effortlessly floating above a blanket of snow in winter. Habotan symbolizes blessings, loving, and prosperity, sentiments that are especially appreciated during the Japanese New Year. The colorful kale heads are a common feature in Japanese cool season garden to invite blessings for the coming year. The pretty rosette-shaped plants can be found in beds and borders, and they are popular potted plants. This is an antioxidant-rich plant that will dazzle in the garden and delight on the dinner plate. That's Japanese flowering kale. I'm reading to you out of the Baker's Creek catalog. So that's one that I probably would like to grow. Some Japanese flowering kale. Okay, let's go take a look now in healing as corrected perception. In paragraph 80, he says, only perception can be sick, because only perception can be wrong. So remember, we're working with our mind, with our perceptions. All forms of sickness, even unto death, are physical expressions of the fear of awakening. They are attempts to reinforce unconsciousness out of fear of consciousness. This is a pathetic way of trying not to know by rendering the faculties for knowing ineffectual. Rest in peace is a blessing for the living, not the dead, because rest comes from waking, not from sleeping. How you wake is the sign of how you have used sleep. To whom did you give it? Under which teacher did you place it? Whenever you wake dispiritedly, it was not of the Holy Spirit. Only when you awaken joyously have you utilized sleep according to the Holy Spirit's purpose. You can indeed be drugged by sleep, but this is always because you have misused it on behalf of sickness. Sleep is no more a form of death than death is a form of unconsciousness. Unconsciousness is impossible. You can rest in peace only because you are awake. The will to wake is the will to love, since all healing involves replacing fear with love. Paragraph 85 and 6 and 7. The ego wants only what it hates. To the ego, this is perfectly sensible. Believing in the power of attack, the ego wants attack. You've surely begun to realize that this is a very practical course, which means exactly what it says. So does the Bible, if it is properly understood. There has been a marked tendency on the part of many of the Bible's followers and also its translators to be entirely literal about fear and its effects, but not about love and its results. Thus, hellfire means burning, but raising the dead becomes allegorical. Actually, it is particularly the references to the outcomes of love which should be taken literally, because the Bible is about love, being about God. Reminds me of that Bible verse says God is love. The Bible enjoins you to be perfect, to heal all errors, to take no thought of the body as separate, and to accomplish all things in my name. This is not my name alone, for ours is a shared identification. The name of God's Son is one, and you are enjoined to do the works of love because we share this oneness. Okay, the next section is the acceptance of reality. Number 8, that first paragraph. Fear of the will of God is one of the strangest beliefs the human mind has ever made. This could not possibly have occurred unless the mind were already profoundly split, making it possible for the mind to be afraid of what it really is. Okay, in paragraph 92, the purpose of this guide, we're speaking of the Holy Spirit, our guide, is merely to remind you of what you want. He is not attempting to force an alien will upon you. He is merely making every possible effort within the limits you impose on him to reestablish your own will in your consciousness. You have imprisoned your will in your unconscious. In your unconscious. You have imprisoned your will in your unconscious. Let's jump down in paragraph 94, and he says, we have emphasized many times that the Holy Spirit will never call upon you to sacrifice anything. But if you ask the sacrifice of reality of yourselves, the Holy Spirit must remind you that this is not God's will, because it is not yours. There is no difference between your will and God's. If you did not have split minds, you would recognize that willing is salvation, because it is communication. Paragraph 96 and 7. Reality is the only safety your will. Reality is the only safety. Your will is your salvation because it is the same as God's. The separation is nothing more than the belief that it is different, that your will is different than God. That is the meaning of the separation or the fall. No mind can believe that its will is stronger than God's. If then a mind believes that its will is different from his, It can only decide either that there is no God or that God's will is fearful. The former accounts for the atheist and the latter for the martyr. Martyrdom takes many forms, the category including all doctrines that hold that God demands sacrifice of any kind. Either basic type of insane decision will induce panic because the atheist believes he is alone and the martyr believes that God is crucifying him. Both really fear abandonment and retaliation, but the atheist is more reactive against abandonment and the martyr against retaliation. Paragraph 99. Ultimately, everyone must remember the will of God because ultimately everyone must recognize Him. This recognition is the recognition that His will and God's are one. And the last paragraph of that section. Remember then that God's will is already possible and nothing else will ever be. This is the simple acceptance of reality, because only this is real. You cannot distort reality and know what it is. And if you do distort reality, you will experience anxiety, depression, and ultimately panic because you're trying to make yourself unreal. When you feel these things, do not try to look beyond yourself for truth can only be within you. Truth can only be within you. Say, therefore, Christ is in me, and where He is, God must be, for Christ is part of Him. Okay, and the last section is the answer to prayer, section 11. At first couple paragraphs, he says, you must remember, however, that the Course does state and repeatedly that its purpose is the escape from fear. Let us suppose then that what you request of the Holy Spirit is what you really want, but you are still afraid of it. Should this be the case, your attainment of it would no longer be what you want, even if it is. This accounts for why certain specific forms of healing are not achieved, even though the state of healing is. It frequently happens that an individual asks for physical healing because he is fearful of bodily harm. At the same time, however, if he were healed physically, the threat to his thought system would be considerably more fearful to him than its physical expression. In this case, he is not really asking for release from fear, but for the removal of a symptom which he has selected. This request is therefore not for healing at all. Okay, the next paragraph, the Bible emphasizes that all prayers are answered, and this must be true if no effort is wasted. If you would know your prayers are answered, never doubt a son of God. Never doubt a son of God. Boy, He wants us to see our connection with each other. How you treat your brother is how you treat yourself. How you think of your brother and sisters, how you think of yourself. Paragraph 111. The message your brother gives you is up to you. What does he say to you? What would you have him say? Your decision about him determines the message you receive. Your decision about him determines the message you receive. Remember that the Holy Spirit is in him, and His voice speaks to you through him. What can so holy a brother tell you except truth? But are you listening to it? Your brother may not know who he is, but there is a light in his mind which does know. The light can shine into yours, making his words true and making you able to hear them. His words are the Holy Spirit's answer to you. Is your faith in Him strong enough to let you hear? And over in paragraph 117, never forget then that you have set the value on what you receive and have priced it by what you give. And he talked just a paragraph or two before that, he was talking about how if paying is equated with getting, you will set the price low but demand a high return. You will have forgotten, however, that to price is to value, and your return is the proportion to your judgment of worth. If paying is associated with giving, it cannot be perceived as loss, and the reciprocal relationship of giving and receiving will be recognized. So never forget then that you have set the value on what you receive and have priced it by what you give. And the last paragraph that we're going to read is paragraph 118 and 19. He says, you can ask of the Holy Spirit then only by giving to Him, and you can give to Him only where you see Him. If you see Him in everyone, consider how much you will be asking of Him and how much you will receive. Wow, see Him in everyone. He will deny you nothing because you have denied Him nothing, and so you can share everything. This is the way and the only way to have His answer, because His answer is all you can ask for and want. Say then to everyone, because I will to know myself, I see you as God's Son and my brother. Because I will to know myself, I see you as God's Son and my brother. And now let's take one last look, or let's look in our Manual for Teachers reading. What is the peace of God? It has been said that there is a kind of peace that is not of this world. How is it recognized? How is it found? And being found, how can it be retained? Let us consider each of these questions separately, for each reflects a different step along the way. First, how can the peace of God be recognized? God's peace is recognized at first by just one thing. In every way, it is totally unlike all previous experiences. It calls to mind nothing that went before. It brings with it no past associations. It is a new thing entirely. There is a contrast, yes, between this thing and all the past. But strangely, it is not a contrast of true differences. The past just slips away, and in its place is everlasting quiet. Only that. The contrast first perceived has merely gone. The contrast first perceived has merely gone. Quiet has reached to cover everything. How is the quiet found? No one can fail to find it who but seeks out its conditions. God's peace can never come where anger is. Because what's the condition of the kingdom? The condition of peace? It's that condition where there's no anger, for sure. For anger must deny that peace exists. Who sees anger as justified in any way or in any circumstance proclaims that peace is meaningless and must believe that it cannot exist. In this condition, peace cannot be found. Therefore, forgiveness is the necessary condition for finding the peace of God. Forgiveness is the necessary condition for finding the peace of God. More than this, given forgiveness, there must be peace. For what except attack will lead to war, and what but peace is opposite to war? Here the initial contrast stands out clear and apparent. Yet, when peace is found, the war is meaningless, and it is conflict now that is perceived as non-existent and unreal. How is the peace of God retained once it is found? Returning anger, in whatever form, will drop the heavy curtain once again, and the belief that peace cannot exist will certainly return. War is again accepted as the one reality. Now must you once again lay down your sword, although you may not recognize that you have picked it up again. But you will learn, as you remember even faintly now what happens was yours without it, that you must have taken it again as your defense. Stop for a moment now and think of this. Is conflict what you want, Or is God's peace the better choice? Which gives you more? A tranquil mind is not a little gift. Would you not rather live than choose to die? Living is joy, but death can only weep. You see in death escape from what you made, but this you do not see, that you made death, and it is but illusion of an end. Death cannot be escaped because it is not life in which the problem lies. Life has no opposite, for it is God. Life and death seem to be opposites because you have decided that death ends life. Forgive the world, and you will understand that everything which God created cannot have an end, and nothing He did not create is real. Let's read that again. Remember, we're going to attain peace by forgiveness, and when we lose our peace, we'll reestablish it by the practice of forgiveness, which is the recognition that what you thought is not real. We're going to start seeing reality. Forgiveness is not letting go of something that's real. That'd be insanity. It's letting go of what is not real because it is not real, even though the world says it is, and you've believed it. You've believed that perception that you've sent out. So, forgive the world, and you will understand that everything which God created cannot have an end, and nothing He did not create is real. In this one sentence is our course explained. In this one sentence is our practicing given its one direction. And in this, the Holy Spirit's whole curriculum is specified exactly as it is. So let me read it one more time, that one sentence. Forgive the world, and you will understand that everything which God created cannot have an end, and nothing He did not create is real. And the last paragraph. What is the peace of God? No more than this, the simple understanding that His will is wholly without opposite. There is no thought that contradicts His will, yet can be true. The contrast between His will and yours but seem to be reality. In truth, there is no conflict because His will is yours. Now is the mighty will of God Himself His gift to you. He does not seek to keep it for Himself. Why would you seek to keep your tiny, frail imaginings apart from Him? The will of God is one and all there is. This is your heritage. The universe beyond the sun and stars and all the thoughts of which you can conceive belong to you. God's peace is the condition for His will. Attain His peace, and you remember Him. You want to remember God? Well, then attain His peace. All right? And again, our lesson for today. My attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability. My attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability. So take that into the silence 6 times for 2 minutes each time today. And one thing I wanted to mention to you is if you get up the next morning after you've been doing your lesson and you're not sure that you did it well, I always get 1 or 2 more meditations or quiet times in before I start my new lesson. And that way I kind of feel like I've really got it. And maybe that'll help you. Anyway, for whatever, my mind or my attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you tomorrow. My attack thoughts are attacking my invulnerability.